Okay, we're calling the meeting to order. We'll start with a pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Come on, I just buried my stupid opener. There it is. Sorry, I talk to myself a lot after 9:50. This is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioners' districts of the county. The purpose of this board is to review applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by this board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. All 6 questions must be answered in the affirmative to grant the request. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in the granting of variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. We have 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first one being James and Lynn Bartel Revocable Farm Trust, 11996 Badger Creek Road, Swanville. Application for a variance to construct a home within the setback of 2 feedlots located in Swanville Township. If the applicant would please come forward and state your name for the record.
Lynn Bartel.
Have a seat.
Okay. Speak right into the microphone
Josh Kraska.
and repeat again, Lynn.
Lynn Bartel.
Thank you. All right. I guess we're ready for staff report.
Okay, Mr. Chair, again, this is a variance request to construct a dwelling addition within setback to 2 feedlots located in section 6 of Swanville Township. The ordinance references for this request is section 1208.1 and 1209.1 as it relates to non-feedlot residents setbacks from tier 1 and tier 2 facilities. This is a plat map of Swanville Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And another site drawing provided by the applicant. And then here is the parcel outlined in red. And then some oblique imagery, and the arrow is the home that we're talking about today. And then here are some photographs taken at the site viewing. Again, the property is in section 6 of Swanville Township, and the applicant owns and lives on this 8.82 acre parcel. According to the assessor's records, the home was built in 1970. The existing home is 1,232 square feet. That does not include the attached garage and breezeway. A Tier 1 beef feedlot currently exists on the adjacent parcel to the east, and Tier 2 turkey feedlot exists on the parcel on the west. So then here is a figure with that. So of course on the east with the green dot is the location of the beef feedlot, the Tier 1. And then on the west is the Tier 2 turkey feedlot. The beef farm to the east was first registered in 2002 and was formerly owned by the applicant. The home was the feedlot residence. The applicants conveyed the property to the east, where the beef feedlot is located, to another owner in 2018. At that time, the residence was no longer considered the feedlot residence. The turkey farm to the west was first registered in 2004. A land use permit was granted in 2000 to construct a breezeway and attached garage onto the south side of the existing home. The home does not meet setback from either of the feedlots. A 1,000-foot setback is required from the Tier 2 feedlot on the west side, and a 660-foot setback is required from the Tier 1 feedlot on the east. And then here is an aerial just showing the distance of the home to the nearest animal holding area for each of those feedlots. The applicant is requesting a variance to place a dwelling addition onto the south and west side of the home. This addition would be onto the garage constructed in 2000. Once the dwelling is complete, the old portion of the dwelling on the north side of the garage would be demolished. So here is an approximate drawing of what that addition would look like, and then the X is the portion of the structure that would be demolished. The addition would further encroach on the nearest animal holding areas of both feedlots. At the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the property owner: the desire to utilize the newest portion of the home built in 2000, and the need that must add to the south end of the home to do that. The addition onto the home on the south and west will cause further encroachment on the feedlots on either side. And considering both feedlots, no compliant building envelope exists on the parcel. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is agriculture, goal A1, objective 1, and objective 4, objective 8, and then goal A2 and A3. Goal A4, and then under that goal, objective 1 and objective 3. The applicable Morrison County Comprehensive Water Plan goals and objectives is the groundwater, goal 1 and 2. Surface water goal, objective A. Land use and development goal, objective A. 36 notices were sent. No correspondence was received prior to the public hearing. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Does the applicant have anything to add at this time?
Yes.
Yes,
This is my son, by the way. Okay.
we actually have a
Jeff,
letter.
Before you start, I just wanted, for the record, on Friday, the 29th, Amy, Clint, and myself were out viewing the property. Were the other board members able to view?
And for the record, I was there on, I reviewed both sites on Monday. That would have been the first, I believe.
Yeah, and I went out on Sunday right after lunch, and I drove in and drove around. So,
And I was out there on Friday evening.
Okay, so we've all viewed the property.
Been there.
Sorry I interrupted you,
No, that's
but I had to get that in there.
This is all new to us, so you can help. us
Mr.
walk
Chair, I
through
got
this.
one thing for the record too. If we're gonna be transparent. It's a dairy feedlot, right? It isn't a
Yes.
beef feedlot.
It is
I don't know too many milk trucks that show up at a beef feedlot.
Yes,
When we were out there on our site visit, the milk truck stopped, so
Yes, they did.
I just thought we'd clarify that.
yes.
Okay, since we've interrupted your train of thought here,
Okay, starting
your
from.
response.
We did get a letter from both we have them with us, a letter from both feedlots saying that they have no problem and that they can't see any issues with it now or in the future moving forward. It's approximately 45 feet closer to the turkey barn feedlot, that's the Tier 2. I talked to them yesterday and the previous days, and they were just fine with it. We have a letter signed from them. If you need that,
I'll take them.
okay.
And the other feedlot?
I own the feedlot. I'm their son. And with my brother, we own it together, and we've also agree and have a letter there.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to add at this time? I'm sure we'll have some questions for you.
That's probably true.
Okay. I notice your contractor is out
Yes,
with
he
you
is.
too and could answer questions.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Amy, before we get started, could you review a little bit of this history that's in your staff report, particularly the split of this property in 2018?
Mr. Chair, there was no split.
Oh, there was.
Yeah, so the parcel that this house sits on has been in existence at least from the 1960s. So there was no split that happened. It was just a conveyance. So the parcel that had the home was owned it was in the same name and owned by the feedlot owners as well. And so we regarded that as the feedlot residence. Once those had two separate owners, then we no longer regarded, because the feedlot was not owned and operated by the home located adjacent to the feedlot, that's where it lost its feedlot status or feedlot residence status. So there was no split that happened in 2000.
The 8.82,
Correct, that's always been a standalone
Always
parcel.
parcel.
Yes.
okay.
The barn, as far as for establishment of the feedlots, the house has been on the site since 1970. The turkey barns were built in 1988. So
What
all
year
of
did you say?
88.
Okay, 88.
So all of these structures and uses were established prior to land use controls. As far as we had land use controls, but we didn't regulate feedlots the way we do now until much later. So all of these are really, legally established uses at the time that now, by operation of our ordinance, don't meet the required setbacks. And so that's the situation that we're in. Make sense?
And so it was completely fine to convey one parcel and split off, for lack of a better term, the feedlot home.
That would have, at that time, would have required it, but we don't see conveyances. We see splits and so we're not always aware of those when they occur. And so if we were aware that the feedlot was going to move separately from the feedlot residence parcel, we would have had that conversation. The residence could continue to exist exactly the way it is. It wouldn't require any sort of variance. But this is where we have that issue, when there's a change and we have a further encroachment now. That's when we see the consequence of the feedlot residents moving separately from the feedlot.
Okay. We're good with understanding that? Okay, thank you. So right now, the 8.82 acre plot with the residence on it has an easement through the dairy feedlot, through
Yes.
your property, okay. And that's the only access to,
Absolutely.
otherwise it's a landlocked,
Yep.
basically parcel, okay.
Yep.
All right, that clarified what I wanted to touch on. Anybody else on the Board of Adjustment like to weigh in? Ask a
Mr. Chair,
question? Go ahead, Brent.
Amy, could you back up to the overview flyover of the property in question here?
Absolutely. Let me know which image you want.
That last one was just fine, I think, for the purposes of the question. So where the house and garage is now, is there another structure or a house in the woods right next to that, like the old
Yes.
farms, the original
The
old
original
farmstead?
house, yes.
Okay. And what is what's the intent with that? What's going to happen with that?
That will be torn down also.
Okay. I thought I saw something back there in the woods when I was out there.
Yes.
It's the original house.
And-
Nobody lives there. It's inhabitable. It's just,
And
Hasn't
that
been taken.
actually is on that 8
it's,
acre?
no.
No.
No?
That,
Where you see the furnace, if you can pick that out and it goes out to the road, that's about the line in between the houses
yes.
there.
We had this
We had
all
it
surveyed.
Before we did this
In
change.
2018.
Yeah.
So where that blue line is on the upper part of that isn't quite right when we had it surveyed. So the old house is actually on my feedlot property.
Yeah.
So that top blue line
It's
Isn't
too
quite
far.
right on that.
it's a little higher than
It's
it should be, it
It
should be a little
down
lower?
a little bit.
Okay, I see.
It's actually in between the two houses.
Sure.
And that's actually where it was supposed to be when they did the split in the sixties.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else? Have questions at this point?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, right on
Go
one.
ahead, Clint.
Can I ask him question 5? See what his answer would be.
Say it again.
Can I ask him question 5?
Like the response to question 5?
No, can I ask them?
Absolutely.
Okay. So as we go through this, you know, these questions, we're kind of legally bind through these and we got to prove them, okay?
Yep.
So the one that's going to be real difficult for us is the need for this variance created by others, or is the need for this variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowner? So how would you answer this and tell me that the need for this variance was created by actions other than you guys or previous landowners?
I would say it's just because of it, it would be us because of my husband's stroke.
Yes.
The house is not,
The house that they're living in has issues anyway, but it is not 100% handicap accessible. So when he had a stroke, I guess we could say it's his fault.
well,
We were able to bring him home and we somewhat modified the house.
right.
The best that they could possibly do this with the amount of space in their bathroom. Is it working? Yes.
It works. But
Is it actually handicap accessible? Not great.
Okay, I understand that, and that's good. Now, the next part of it is you can rebuild right where it is exactly.
It-
So by
Yes.
him wanting to stay in there while you're building, it's hard to answer question 5. What would your answer be to that?
Why they can't just build in the spot?
Yeah,
Well, they've looked into finding handicap accessible rental units in Swanville or approximate area. There is none. No, there's none available.
yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Swanville townhomes in Swanville would be handicap accessible. But there is nothing available. There's a waiting list for it currently, and they don't have a timeline when that could be. It could be 6 months, it could be 6 years. They didn't tell me how long the list was. So for them to stay in this house while they're building on the other side is somewhat crucial for them.
okay.
Right now, mom works full-time at the mill.
Full-time,
She comes home, she takes care of dad,
yeah.
and then she still is involved in our farming operation. She comes out every single night and milks cows. So for her to move further away than Swanville, there's not enough hours in the day, almost. I mean, she could possibly move to Little Falls for a short while. But if you add extra drive time, she's gonna have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning just to make it to her regular job. Add an hour to drive home, take care of him, feed him, do his normal stuff, eat, then drive back out to the farm, which would be a half an hour, do 2 hours to 2.5 hours of chores if everything goes well, and then drive back to somewhere in Little Falls. So we didn't even look at Little Falls or anything beyond Swanville right now for a spot to live.
Okay.
I think I can maybe help answer the question.
Do you want to?
Maybe come up here and talk into the mic. I'm sorry, Dave, you should be talking back.
So I think
Go
if
up to the
you're-
podium up there and, oh, go ahead, right there, that's fine. Identify yourself.
Okay, I'm Jason Arnzen with St. Rosa Lumber. Was kind of helping them through the permit process here,
Okay.
but I guess to answer that question, I think the answer maybe that you'd be looking for is it created by somebody else's actions? Well, kind of, in a way, because when they built the house, the feedlots weren't really there. So the county put the feedlot setbacks into play. So technically, it's not the landowner that created the need for the variance. So I think that kind of answers the question that you were asking.
Okay, thank you. Is that, any other questions for him as long as he's up here? Okay, thank you.
I guess I do.
All right.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Did we find that square footage? Amy, did you look that up?
I put it in the. Okay, let me get to it here.
And what was the proposed square footage of this new house?
I believe it was 1,900 square feet.
On the second bullet in front of you, it's 1,232 square feet.
Okay.
That is not including the garage and breezeway since that part is staying.
Okay. And then it was gonna be 1,900?
1984, yeah.
1984, okay.
And part of the increase in square footage is to make the house handicapped and
Yep.
accessible. Rooms have to be a little larger.
And there is no basement in the new house for utility room,
Okay,
Correct, so now everything's on one level for before.
where everything is in the basement in the old house.
So I believe the basement's under the entire house?
Yes, it is.
So it's actually 24 or 64
Yeah,
okay.
because it's stacked.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead, Marv.
Mr. Chair, I believe this is going to be towards Amy, or maybe Dave, you can help answer this. We've ran into this before, and I believe the county's plan is to be able, where people can stay in their homes as long as possible and create a safe environment. I think that's part of a comprehensive plan there. Can you answer that?
Within the comprehensive land use plan goals and objectives in residential, we do make statements about offering and allowing a variety of housing options and to be able to keep people in their home as long as possible. I think that's what is that what you're
That is
getting at?
correct, because we ran into a situation like this about a year ago, and where a person had wanted to put addition on their home, and it was encroaching on the setbacks of the lake, but they were elderly, and we approved of it because of that.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Anybody else? Okay, and if there's nobody else, we'll go to public input. Open up the meeting for public input at this time. If anybody has anything to add for or against this variance request, now is the time. I'm the only landowner to join them. You please stand up, state your name for the record. Go up to the microphone, please, so we can get you on tape. I'm sorry, we got to make you go through all this ordeal. Adjoining landowner, and I don't have anything against them applying for this variance. That should be done. I hope you guys can pass it for them because they need it. Thank you, Neil. Okay, is there anybody else in the public that would like to add to this? Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? If not, we'll close it to public input at this time and back to the board. Are we ready for the questions? Would you like to dig a little deeper?
We can work through it.
Okay. Probably can work through it with the question. Okay, the first question is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Starting out with Brent.
Yes, I believe it is. due to circumstances, this family is in a need to make adjustments to keep a family member staying in the home, and I think we're trying to accommodate that, and that is in harmony with the comprehensive plan of Morrison County.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Brent? Brent, anything else? You're good? Okay.
Good, thanks.
I guess I'm next. I agree with that, but at the same time, this disconnecting the feedlot residents from the feedlot certainly sets up the feedlot for many conflicts. The day we were there was a conflict with the bulk truck coming in. We had to move our vehicles, get out of the way, get around it. Was not easy. Now, variances go with the land, not the landowner. We don't create a variance just for the Bartels. We create a variance for that parcel of land. And has all this been done in in a thoughtful manner, in a way that will present itself well in the future? I don't think so. There's an easement through the feedlot. There's going to be a difficulty for future owners. I think the intent is for that parcel to become part of the dairy feedlot again, and you had indicated that that might be your home on the feedlot someday. Might be. Should be right now. Perhaps a different arrangement should have been thought through before this kind of predicament that you're in. But at the same time, would there be the same variance request needed? I guess there would be, because it'd be encroaching upon the other feedlot with this addition. You'd still need a variance, but easier to give you a variance if it was, the way it is now. There could be a feedlot residence, this residence going through, in the future. Be much easier if it was a typical farm homestead with a single feedlot residence, rather than a nod feedlot residence. So I don't think the intent of the ordinance was to have situations like this, and I think you set yourself up for this in the answer to question number 5, before we're there, in that you created this situation when you split it off, or not split it off, but removed your residents from the feedlot. It's all caused by that motion in 2018. So, sorry, anybody else have to add to that, want to add to that?
I do, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
I somewhat agree with some of the statements you've made, and this is a tough one. I think moving forward, we're going to have to make some decisions on. I think you're going to see more and more of these things in the agricultural area, just because of family dynamics and things like that. So I know there's 2 commissioners here. Maybe they can take that to heart for when we change some of these rulings. But with that being said, if you look at, I think it's somewhat in harmony, because if you look at the goals and objectives for the ag on what it states, okay, this house was, yes, it's pulled away from the feedlot, but that was there before the feedlot that they're going to encroach on with this, okay? So the only thing that's really changing is the house is getting moved from one side of the garage to the other. So they're encroaching on the poultry feedlot by 40-some feet, whatever, okay? So they're encroaching on that, but it's already an existing house that's already there. I don't see where that doesn't ensure that we protect the agriculture industry or or where it hurts that it restricts any farming practices. You know, when we look at, well, we want to ensure that the county policies and ordinance do not restrict farming practices. I don't know where this would really restrict that. It's hard to set precedences sometimes, you know, but I think what we're really talking about here is a difference of 45 feet. That's how I see it. So I think it's somewhat in harmony with the general purposes intent of the land use ordinances and comprehensive plan. That'd be my comment.
Thank you, Clint. Any other additions to that? Marv?
All I want to reiterate is, you know, here you did mention about the fact that breaking it away from that, and here I'll just state that, you know, they want to stay in their home as long as possible. What is that 40-some feet going to make any difference? It really isn't going to make a whole lot of difference what side of the garage it is. And it might even create a little bit more room for parking space and all. When you talked about vehicles and moving around there, I think it would help with that.
Okay. Dave, anything to add?
No, I went out there and, you know, you drive up and down that service road, I don't know what else you'd call it, the gravel road that runs kind of parallel to 28, and, you know, it's just part of the neighborhood. I mean, as far as fitting into the neighborhood and the culture and the way it is, and the way it sounds is that house, that feedlot, the turkey feedlot was built after the house. So, you know, he's gonna move a little bit closer to that. I think we'd be out of line to deny this. But that's maybe not official, but I think the house was there before that turkey feedlot was, so.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, nothing else on question number 1? Question number 2 is the applicant proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance. We'll start out with myself on that one, or no, Brent Lindgren on that one. Did I start with you last time? Oh, I was supposed to start with Marv last time. Marv, you can start this one.
I think they are planning on using it in a reasonable method here. And the reason why I'm going to state this is Amy stated earlier that this home was built before the setbacks, as the contractor stated, and that was the practical difficulty. And here it's sandwiched between them, and shifting it 40-some feet is not going to make a whole lot of difference. So I think it's very reasonable what they're asking for.
Okay, Brent. Anything to add?
Nothing further.
Myself, I think it's just getting more complicated, but like you say, 45 feet, and the turkey farm, Badger Creek has written a letter saying it doesn't matter to them. I guess that is reasonable, and have to hopefully go with the flow that this ends up in the right hands at the right time, and the conflict between the non-feedlot residents and the feedlot don't perpetuate. Okay, anybody else? Go ahead, Clint.
Mr. Chair, you know, everybody knows me, I'm a big proponent for ag, and I don't like to really tear up ag or anything like that, and this is a big dynamics, you know, and we're gonna, like I said before, we're gonna have more issues like this with families, and, you know, I kind of, with my own family, you know, with my kids at the farm and doing things with me, there's some things that are gonna have to happen in my own operation in the future, and it's just a tough deal, but I think it's reasonable to allow them 45 feet. You know, I mean, if we were going to allow them 450 feet, that's totally different. It's not, you know, it's just like if we're at a lake, I think 5 feet's a lot bigger deal getting 5 feet closer to a lake than we are 45 feet from a turkey barn when it's a farm family that's been there their whole life. I don't know. So I think that the applicant's proposal is reasonable.
Okay. Any other additions? Question number 2? Okay, remember, it's supposed to be 1,000 feet, Clint. No. Okay, number 3, will the variance maintain character of the neighborhood will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Starting out with myself first. Yeah, nothing will change as far as it goes. The only thing I can think of is future owners. Variance goes with the land, not the landowner. That's a difficult one to get over. Put our blinders on, forget about that. Then the character of the locality is maintained, especially if it becomes a feedlot residence again someday. Anybody else have anything to add? Number 3. Essential character.
I think what I'd like to add to it is if you look at, okay, Swanville's kind of unique in its own, just from its, the community, okay? If you look at a lot of these little towns in Morrison County that are kind of ag-orientated, there's a lot of these crammed together farms and feedlots, and some of it has to do with being close to town years ago. Some of it has to be with each municipal kind of has their own rules. Some of them do. With some of this stuff, the way it was split up, have to do with municipal from Swanville, and then it got out of it. I don't know that. I'm just saying. So if you look around that area, I wouldn't say that a house being split off from the feedlot, but things being kind of crammed together to the way they are with a lot of farms and houses. I think that's kind of the essential character of that whole area. So that's what I'd add to that.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in on number 3? Okay, we'll go on to number 4. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Starting with Clint?
You had to ask me that one, huh? I'd have time to think.
I thought it flowed automatically.
We can go to Dave and come back to you.
Yeah, because I got to word it right, so.
Sorry, Dave.
No, but I'll go. I'll try for it. So, the practical circumstance unique to the property. Even if we left the feedlot and the house together, okay, that would be unique. Because of, like I said earlier, with the region, the area, that small farming community, just the way things are divided up, how things were kind of compacted together. And now you take the dynamics of the family. It's kind of unique that it got split up, and I know that's their thing, but I think what's really unique to this property, and I don't know if it's really the property or the circumstances around Jim, with what happened to him and him wanting to be able to stay on the farm. It's my wishes myself that I pass away on my farm, and I got a lot of years to go, I hope. So I totally understand the fight and the willingness to want to stay out there. And then having to be forced to have a different residence because of the mold issues, his handicap that he has now because of his health, and having to have a handicap accessible house. And then with the need for care not being readily available so that they could move off while they tear the house apart and build a new one in an exact location. I think that's what makes the practical difficulty unique to this property. Is that enough, Amy? I mean, yeah.
Anybody else like to add?
If you understand what I said.
Oh, I think you did a good job.
Go ahead, Mark.
I want to piggyback on this here. Here my wife has got MS, confined to a wheelchair. And when you're in them situations, you understand it. Till you're not in it, you don't really understand it and the challenges that go in with that. And with that being stated as not finding homes, not being able to, and then having to remodel a home and dealing with all the room you need to turn around with, it does bring a lot of challenges. So they need to do something here.
You guys are switching the way I'm thinking about this, the more further we go along here. I'd say there's no building envelope. That's a practical difficulty for this property. There is no place to build without a variance, whether it's a feedlot residence or not a feedlot residence, as has been pointed out. Also, a practical difficulty, which is more a personal difficulty, but since it's an ordinance and we've talked about it, there is no local handicap housing available to help carry over this family if they were to demolish and rebuild in the same spot. So I'm citing those as practical difficulties in this rather unique situation.
So you're saying that no,
No building envelope, no handicap housing available.
that's your practical difficulty. Okay, I like it.
You like everything at 10:30.
You two must be brothers.
Anybody else want to add to number 4? Notice I didn't even look toward you, Amy, and ask you what you thought. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave, we're starting out with you.
Yes, if you include the fact that, I think that the need for the variance is caused by county regulations changing. And, that I mean, it was, you gotta come and all of a sudden say that, no, I'd say the variance is created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. It's the county.
Okay, anybody else like to add to that?
Just also on top of that, basically what Dave stated here is this home was built before the feedlot regulations were in play here. So that's what created this.
And as was stated earlier, the turkey barn came in after the home was
That is
there.
correct.
Okay. And the home was originally part of the dairy feedlot.
Correct, and it still didn't meet the setbacks to the barn at that time, too.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to
Mr. Chair?
add? Go ahead, Clint.
So your no building envelope, what the reasoning for that, would that be because of the prior landowners or?
Because of the way these, yeah.
So I mean,
Because
I would
of
add,
actions other than the landowner.
so I would add that part to it from what your previous answer was to the question ahead of it, that there is no building envelope. So the need for the variance is created by other actions other than the landowner and prior landowner.
That created the lack of a building envelope.
Yep.
Okay. I like that. We're getting punchy here. Go ahead. Anybody else? Number 5. Do we have enough there? Okay. Number 6, does the practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv, you get to lead on that one.
Well, economics is part of it, but here, because they're going to be shoving a lot into it, but here it is, they contacted the neighbors and they have no problem with this here. And here, as was stated, this had no building envelope. And what did they do to accommodate this home so they can still stay into it? So they're looking at everything possible that they can stay in this home, build this new addition, and they're looking at all things possible in their eyes.
Okay, anybody else? Clint, you got something?
Just to piggyback, I agree with what Marv said, but also just with, with his health problems and, all them things and being able to continue to live out on the farm, I think that just, proves that it's more than economics. That's all I'd have to add.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Improving healthy living, the wet basement has got to be adding to health problems in that house for more than just Mr. Bartel. Letters of support, neighbors are in favor of this, no housing being available. It is money, it's personal preference, but it's more than that. So, anything to add to number 6? You think you understood everything we just kind of rambled off on?
Yeah, and I can circle back on the recording if I didn't.
Okay. All right, thank you. Are you ready for the questions to vote? Okay. Okay, we're starting out with Marv on question number 1. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave? Rucher?
Yes.
Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Myself, the answer is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
Yes.
Dave? Brucher?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave Brucher?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Okay, all the questions that have been answered in the affirmative. Is there a motion to grant this variant request?
Mr. Chair, I move that, can we put a condition on?
Yes.
Yeah. I move, and I don't like conditions, but I would make a motion that we approve this with the condition that the house that they're living in gets tore down when you're done.
That's consistent with how we've been
Not-
answering these questions?
Not that old one that's abandoned, because that's on his property. But I'm saying the house that they're living in right now.
When the new construction is
Completed.
completed, then the home on the north end
Yes.
be demolished, okay.
And I was told we have a year to do that, so it would be down next summer. Well, if we are in a new house.
A year from completion.
You know
After
what?
From
complete-
completion,
After
okay.
completion.
Good luck on getting it done.
He'll get
All
it
right.
done.
We started on reconstruction.
Back to the meeting. No side conversations, please.
No, this
Did everybody understand the motion with the condition?
I do, and I'd like to second that one.
Okay. Motion is made and seconded to approve this with the added condition that the existing house on the north side of the garage be taken down within 1 year of completion of the new addition. Is that how we all understand it? Okay. Any discussion on that motion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave Brucher?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Your variance has been granted.
Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, we already have a permit application on hold, so we'll just go ahead and continue to process that, okay?
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks
Good
a lot.
luck with your project.
We're gonna need
Enjoy
it.
your new home.
Just so you know, that was a lot harder than it looked.
We
It
have-
ain't all that easy on this side of the table either.
Thanks a lot, though.
Okay, thank you. We have another item of business, St. John's Church, 26733 63rd Street, Royalton. Application for a variance to create two non-conforming lots within the ag zoning district, located in Buckman Township. Applicants come forward and state your names for the record, please. Okay,
Sharon Melby.
Alice Wincher.
okay, thank
Past my
you.
bedtime.
I guess we're ready for a staff report.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a request to split the property, creating two undersized lots within the agriculture zoning district. This is located in section 29 of Buckman Township. The ordinance reference is 604.9, and that pertains to lot area in the ag zoning district. Here's a plat map of Beckman Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And here's the variance request received from the applicant. And a site drawing also provided by the applicant. Here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then some aerial imagery. And then here are some site photos taken at the viewing. The 6-acre property is in section 29 of Buckman Township within the agriculture zoning district. Within the district, the minimum parcel size is 5 acres and minimum parcel width is 200 feet. A church, cemetery, home, and garage exist on the property. According to the assessor's records, the church was built in 1947 and the home was built in 1993. The church is currently renting the home to a private party. The applicant is proposing to split the cemetery and church from the home, resulting in an approximately 2.175 acre, 250-foot wide church/cemetery parcel and a 3.6 acre, 397-foot wide parcel with a dwelling and garage. Here's an aerial photograph and just kind of where the proposed split would be and how that property line would look. The church and cemetery would be retained by the applicant, and the parcel with the home may be sold to a private party in the future. At the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the applicant. The sale of the entire parcel is not possible as the church wants to retain ownership of the cemetery. The church is served by a separate septic system than the home, and the septic systems would be on their respective parcels. There is a shared well. If split, the applicant would drill a new well to serve the church. No plans to expand the church building, and a second address would be needed if the parcel is split. Applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is agriculture goal A1, shoreland development, and I don't know, I just thought I'd put that in there to see if you're paying attention. So it's not. Objectives would be 1. 12 notices were sent. 1 comment was received prior to the public hearing. I'll get that. This was received from Gary Solinger, who was representing Buckman Township, and he stated that the township has no issue with this request. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Do applicants have anything to add at this point?
Not really.
Okay, I'm sure we have some questions for you. Who'd like to start out? Any questions, anybody?
I probably
ahead,
have
Brent.
one, Mr. Chair, I have one for Amy. You said that this would need a separate address. There's two driveways there now, and this was a property that was it given to the church at one time? Did I read that?
I don't have that in the staff report.
Yeah, it was donated years ago, well, back in, I don't know what.
140 years
I
ago or
don't know
something.
if that was that long ago.
The whole
deed-
6 acres was given
Yeah.
to
By
use
the-
as
yeah.
I believe it just has one address now.
Yeah.
I think the property is just addressed once. And so, since they'd be separate parcels, then we would address the home separate from the church.
That's not a big deal.
No, not at all.
No.
Okay. right, did that answer your question, Brent?
Yeah, it just seemed odd that it wouldn't already have had a separate address, being it was there.
We used to have a minister in the home.
He resided, and then he took care of any
Thing that went to
mailings
the
or,
church, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
He took
when,
care of
when
the
it
whole-
served as the parsonage, I'm sure all the mail went,
Right.
went to the one.
Everything went, just went to that.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. Anybody else have questions for the applicant? Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair. Probably directed to the ladies here. So is it a Lutheran church?
Correct.
Okay, so then, I know like Catholic churches, they kinda gotta go by what the diocese says and things like that. Is that similar with Lutheran? I'm not familiar with.
Not really. I talked to our president of the Minnesota North District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and he actually gave me, mailed me a printing of their bylaws in the handbook where it says that the membership of a congregation in a synod gives the synod no equity in the property of the congregation, that they are just
Okay.
basically a body to assist us,
Yep.
and we
Okay,
own the property.
okay. So then are you guys, do you have like a board or is
Yeah,
it
we
just
have
a
like a-
two-person show or
Yeah, yeah,
what's
no,
the
it's
deal?
like a committee,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
not many more than that. You know,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
we have probably a dozen members that show up, and that's, and we have our little meetings, our congregational meetings,
Okay.
and we had more of a congregation here earlier, but they had to leave,
Yep,
so.
yep. So then your guys' decision on trying to split that was the congregation
Yes,
decision? It
yes,
wasn't just from
yes.
one or two people?
No,
Okay.
no.
Thank you, then it's.
You're welcome.
I have no other questions at this time.
Question for you, Amy. This doesn't change the dwelling density in that area, in that 40, does it at all?
No,
By
Mr.
splitting it up, because there'd be no dwelling on the church portion.
No, it's not gonna change the quarter that it all sits in, the dwelling density will stay, the same. And so, for example, if the church ever, sometimes we see churches converted to homes, there would have to be available dwelling density within the quarter in order to do that. So it wouldn't automatically open that area up for another dwelling.
Okay, so I was just thinking of other, neighbors' use of their property and how it affects that. Yeah, the church was built in 1947, so, no?
No, it was established in 18-something.
So there was always a building there
There
and a
was always
congregation
something there. There
after the
was a
land
newer-
was given?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
right away. We celebrated 100 years,
I thought I saw that in the
135 years.
staff report.
about 35
Mr.
years ago.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I always qualify that. I always say according to the assessor's records.
Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the date that they use as far as for effective age of the building. And so a lot of times, that's the best available information we have as far as how long a building's been there.
Cemetery, what's the status of that? Are there still, do people own plots in it? Are people still being
So people are still
interred
being
there?
interred in it, yes, and so we have some people that own plots in it, correct, yes. That have not been buried yet, that we have,
What do we say, active yet? It's active yet, and it's being
Okay.
well cared for.
So, no idea how many more plots there are or will be used?
I'm guessing not a lot, but I don't know.
Yeah, hard
With the
question.
members we have, I'm just guessing not, but we
Okay.
do have, some of the, relatives that are interested in.
I guess the reason I'm asking that is, could an acre just be split off with the cemetery and then you'd have 5 acres to sell, and you wouldn't need a variance? The church would go with the house.
Well, you'd still need a variance.
Yeah,
Would you?
Acre.
yeah, I'm not
If
sure
they,
how
if
big
they could come
that,
up with 5, for the remaining cemetery acres? Oh, I suppose. Okay, that answers that question, I guess. Does a cemetery have to be 5 acres? That's just a residence?
No, that's just a minimum lot size in
A
ag.
lot, okay. Okay, not an option.
So the width, Mr. Chair, so the width size is there, Amy,
Yes,
but not the acreage?
correct.
Okay. And I don't know if it makes a difference, but I did view this property on Friday evening. I wasn't with the rest of the group, but I got there
Okay.
late
Okay.
Friday.
Yeah, and for the record, Amy, Clint, and I were there on Friday, the 29th. How about the other guys?
I was there Monday morning, the first.
And Dave, were you able to view the property?
Sure, I was there on Sunday.
Okay.
I had a question. Is that what they call the Dixville?
Dixville, yes.
Dixville, it actually was a community at one time, one of the ghost communities in the county.
Oh, yeah, no, it's pretty familiar with that.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I have one for Amy. So the quota is met, the quarter?
The
in that-
dwelling density for that
yeah.
quarter, I certainly can turn on the map and look.
Well, just,
Since since an additional dwelling wasn't proposed, I didn't,
Yeah.
take a peek, but we absolutely can pull that up.
the only reason I ask is because if there is an available one, then I'd want to put a condition on something. So
Got it.
that's why I
Yep.
asked.
When, as soon as I get this pulled up, the internet is kind of taking its time.
You could probably just keep going, Dave, until she gets it.
Well, Amy's looking that up. Any other comments, questions? Should we go right to public input? That shouldn't take too long? Okay,
Yeah, go right ahead.
okay. Open up the meeting for public input. Is there any public input at this time, for or against? Couple more times, any public input? Any public input? As there's no public input, we will close the meeting to the public and their input at this time. Okay, back to,
Can you get Beacon up? Because mine won't. I'm just gonna see if Sharon can.
Questions?
okay, while looking for that, we can go to the questions, if you're all okay with that? Okay. Is request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Brent?
I believe it is, and they're looking to split the residents from the church and the cemetery. And I think it makes sense to keep the church and the cemetery together.
Okay. Any other input on that?
Yeah, I could add to that, if you look at our agriculture and the comprehensive plan here, it says identify areas of the county that would be appropriate for both, for use by both agriculture and limited residential and commercial uses. Some of them things so the church is there, there's a cemetery there, and there was a parsonage or home. So if you look at it, if it's in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the land use ordinance, I believe it is, because them things are allowed to be in there. Now, to split them off, yes, a house is allowed to be in there, and so is a church and cemetery. So I think the request is in harmony with the general purposes.
Mr. Chair?
We have an answer to the question?
Mr. Chair, can we just circle back? So you have the quarter on, and there's available dwelling density?
Yep, there's only two, the church
The church home?
home, and then the Melvin Pop.
So there's one dwelling
So that'll
allowable,
help.
one additional one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other answers to question number one?
Mr. Chair, I would like to add to it as there were no objections from the neighbors, and also the township had sent a letter stating they were okay with this.
Okay, I guess I'd like to add that it meets all setbacks, feedlots, side yard, road, things like that. you'd have identical use in the future with this split as you have right now. Residence on one side, church and cemetery on the other, no change. The dwelling density isn't changed. In fact, it's been stated that still one more dwelling in that 40 is available. Could argue that the 5 acres is not met. That's the only part of the comprehensive plan ordinance that is not in sync, and the 3.6 acre parcel with the dwelling is a large enough parcel to accommodate a rural residence. Any other thoughts on number 1? Okay, number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by land use ordinance? Well, I guess I'm supposed to start with that. It's reasonable to use the land exactly as it is being used right now, cemetery, church, and a residence. Each have their own separate approach. They will each have their own separate address. I think we would probably be conditioning this to condition it with their intention that there would be a new well on the church parcel. That's what you're proposing?
We do share the well with the parsonage right now.
Correct.
So,
And if it were split, you would drill a new well?
do we have to?
That was your proposal. I'm clarifying.
If we need to drill a new well, there is space available to drill a new well.
Okay.
If we are not sharing the water with whoever is going to live there, which we only are open once a month, our church. You know, so it's just very little use, and so we'd have to work that out if somebody else lives there. But if we have to drill a new well, we will.
Mr.
There's
Chair?
space.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
That's probably gonna, if they ever go to sell that parsonage, the bank will probably have a lot to say about
They'll
that.
put it-
And,
yeah.
and the bank may force that, just because, shared well, sometimes is a no-go for financing.
Right.
And so I think that will probably shake out, when the parsonage is sold, as far as how that can or should be handled.
And we understand that if that does take place, we definitely will need to do that.
Okay, I guess personally, I would think that we might condition it, to consider conditioning it with a new well on the church parcel. That would be my wish. I don't know if anybody else thinks that way.
Mr. Chairman, I think maybe we don't need to do that right away. If they have, if the bank has something to say about it, somebody that buys the house. But for now, if they're gonna use that church once a month, you know, and they borrow a little water from the neighbor, you know, and it works out, I think we should let that one go. But that's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's reasonable. How about a condition stating that no conversion of church property to residence without a variance, without
Excuse
another
me?
variance?
Oh, I see what you say. If somebody wants to buy the
So you'd
church
have
and
a
make it a
parcel with a
property.
cemetery
Oh,
and
yeah,
a church
right.
building, convert the church to a residence?
Yeah, that's fine.
You'd be okay with that
Yeah.
Would be okay with
condition?
that, yes, that's, yeah.
So then, if somewhere down the road you wanted that changed, you'd have to come back to a public hearing. Okay? How about other new construction on that parcel?
On the church parcel,
Yeah,
There should not be
none
any.
intended,
We have no plans.
no plans, no.
just digging footings, huh?
Right, just to keep the church open is our plan.
Yeah, and a grave here and there,
Agree, yeah, that's,
okay? So, no other construction, would that be on that site? Would that be a condition you'd be okay with? I don't know what that gets us,
on
other
the
than,
site, the church, we're leaving the church and the cemetery?
Mm-hmm.
yes.
No other
I don't have-
construction will
yeah.
take place.
Okay, no other construction without a variance.
Right.
I think that's a reasonable thing to request of them because of the unusual split here.
I don't know about the construction. If you do, I think you should limit, or if we do that, it has to be like a structure, because I don't want to limit that to, let's say they want to put up,
Storage shed for the,
that, or some of these cemeteries are going where they're pour concrete, in a long row or some of that, that would probably fall underneath that. You'd have to clarify that. I don't know if we want to go that deep into that. That'd be my only thing with it.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, what would your nexus be for conditioning it that way? What are you alleviating? What concern are you alleviating with not allowing any construction?
I'm not sure where I was going with that. I just thought that it would complicate that parcel, which is undersized, and, it's only, 2.17 acres. If you put a
I think
40 by 60 pole building on it, that would be out of sync with the purpose of the split, I think.
Mr. Chair, I think it'll be somewhat self-limiting, because when you have a small parcel like that and you've got a cemetery behind it, as far as really meeting setback from the road and the side property lines and all of that, I think it might be, it'll probably limit itself just because of that parcel size and those newly created property lines that would need to be met.
Okay. All right. I know it's not your intent, but. Okay,
I think we're still on number 2, Mr. Chair.
yes. Okay, number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? That was my response. Anybody else have a question on that? Anything to add? Number 3, will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes, I believe it will. It's been there for a long, long time, and the only thing we're doing is really splitting property line. You go out in a rural community like that in ag, it's not uncommon to see a church all over the Morrison County and kind of ag zoning and things. So I think that this variance would maintain the essential character of the locality.
Okay, anybody else like to add to question number 3? Marv?
Mr. Chair, basically nothing will change other than adding address.
And if anything changes on the residential parcel, it's, building permits are needed, so only things that would be permittable could be added. Okay, nothing else on number 3. Number 4 is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property, starting out with Dave Brucher.
Yes, it is. This isn't going to, this is unique to that property. We're not going to have too many requests for variances like this. It's pretty unique, so, yeah, I'd say yes, it does, because I'm assuming that the reason you're selling the parsonage is because, what happened, this doesn't relate to the question,
Go
but
ahead.
what happens to the funds from the house if you sell it?
We probably use it to maintain the cemetery.
Put it in.
That's our plan, put it in some sort of a trust, and I mean, as long as we can keep our church open, we'll
Sure.
maintain it, but if that happens, then we'll use those monies to,
When's the last time you had a minister living there?
no, it's probably been 10 years, maybe, no, 7 years, I don't know.
More than that.
We've had
27
somebody
years.
coming in, we had our last minister, actually, was coming all the way from Cambridge.
Who's serving you now, the once a month, then?
Pardon me?
Who is serving you now?
Pastor, his name's Pastor Clemens, he's from St. Cloud area.
Okay, so that's,
And so we had been doing twice a month, and now we're down to once a month, because it's hard to find somebody to, you have to get somebody that's retired, or, because you can't pay them a full salary or whatever, so.
sure.
And so we're doing what we can to try to keep it, because it's a nice little church. It's a
Sure.
nice little area, and We've put a lot into the church itself, as you noticed, probably had new roof, and we got nice siding and new steps and stuff to maintain it, but,
I don't mean to drag the meeting out, I'm just,
yeah.
actually, when I went down to view it, we need to move along.
Anybody else want to weigh in on number 3?
Yeah, I would, Mr. Chair. Due to practical difficulty due to the circumstances unique to the property, it's pretty unique that we have a church, cemetery, and a parsonage in that small of acreage. So I think it is very unique. You don't see that. That ain't everyday common. And I think with the need to maintain and just be able to handle with a small congregation, to be able to maintain and handle the church and the cemetery, I think that it gives the need to split this off so they could let that residents go for just lack of work, workers or time and just the ability to care for it and make sure it's used for something. So,
Okay. Thank you. Any additions to number 4? Number 5 is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. We're starting out with Marvin on that one.
Well, what I'm seeing here is, here you got a parsonage that isn't being used, and it's created, actually creating a problem for them because they've got to maintain it. It's additional costs. And here, as we see in most of these rural churches, the attendance goes down. And here, they don't need an additional burden on it. And how do we survive? And you have to keep the cemetery and the church together. I mean, that is the right thing to do. So how do you survive and do this in a ordinary or in a professional manner? And I believe that, when this was created, they didn't have the setbacks. They didn't have the minimum lot or 5 acres back then.
Thank you, Marv. Anybody want to add to number 5? I agree. I think it would be the dynamics of the area and the church have changed over the years. People are more mobile than they used to be. They go further distances to church. They've moved out of the area. Families aren't as close as they used to be or as large. Needs have changed church-wise. Anybody have anything to add to that? Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Brent, can you start us?
Yes, I think it does. They need to sell the home to have funds to take care of the church and the cemetery. So you've got the economic considerations there, but to maintain a church and a cemetery, I think, is beyond just the economic considerations of the sale of that property. Maintaining that essential character in the area of that old church from the 1800s into today's era, and continuing to have a cemetery there for the placement of church membership is important moving forward.
Anybody else have anything to add? Clint?
Just real quickly add that it's more than economics because, the congregations change. They get smaller, the dynamics of it. They just don't have the manpower to go ahead and keep everything that they have. So I think it's just a consolidation. I think that's more than just economics.
The only thing I'd like to add is that, I was talking with Amy, what happens to cemeteries when there's nobody to take care of them anymore? It becomes the responsibility of the township, is it?
Generally, it'll go to the county and/or the township if you have, there's just a ton of state laws regarding cemeteries and abandonment of cemeteries and perpetual care of cemeteries, and it falls on a local unit of government generally to provide that upkeep if the cemetery is considered abandoned.
The reason I ask that now is, it's our government taking care of, what we should be taking care of, or the church taking care of it? And, I guess I'd commend you for,
And that's kind of our
Doing
goal.
this.
We don't want to have somebody else taking care of it. We want to be able to take care of it ourselves as long as we can.
okay. All right, any additions to number 6? Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, no conditions then, right? We're voting with no conditions in mind? Okay,
Maybe the only one would be that they couldn't change the church into a house. You guys would be fine with that, right?
I'm fine with it.
I don't have a problem with that.
yeah, I'd like that too, now that you mention it. Everybody else okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, with that in mind then, let's vote on these questions. Is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and comprehensive plan? Brent?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave? Brucia?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Okay, number 2 is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance. Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave Brucia?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes.
Dave Brucia?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 4 is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property. Dave Brucia?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 5 is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave Brucia?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than economic considerations? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave Brucia?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Okay, we've answered all the questions in the affirmative. Is there a motion to grant this variance request?
Mr. Chair, I would like to have us approve this here and grant this request with the condition that Clint stated that church would not be converted into living quarters.
I second that motion.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? If no further discussion, we'll proceed to vote. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
What's
Thank
next,
you very
Amy?
much.
Yeah, so the next step then would be to get a survey done that actually, outlines those two and gets a legal description of both of those parcels. And then, you would bring that to the Land Services Department for
Then we're in good shape.
review. And then you would go ahead and have your deeds drawn up and record that, and that's what effectively creates those two parcels.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Hope you guys are done now, too.
About 5 minutes.
I hope quicker because I was supposed to be
Bye.
home and, geez, Dave said he was gonna be done at 11.
Yeah, I did, didn't I?
Getting close.
Okay, minutes. Have we reviewed the minutes?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the September 28th minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Any new business?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Old business?
I don't have any of that either.
Huh, what's the difference between old and new business, anyway?
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
I would second that one.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned at 11:13. Aye.